Welcome back to another episode of How to Home Podcast. My name is Aaron Massey alongside Tracy Pendergast. And today we've got artist Peter Staley here with us, and we're going to talk about ways that we can blend creativity and construction. Peter makes some really interesting cabins and really interesting art, and we're going to dive into all his different projects.
I have some kind of hokey things I sometimes call them shrines to nature. But
I need one of those.
I feel like those kind of statements don't really capture what they seem a little more pretentious than I actually am about them.
I don't think it's pretentious. I feel like I need one now that you described
They're
it
unique.
that way.
I mean, they're just like, they're visually cool, but they're also like natural. I mean, they kind of tie into the landscape a little bit, which I think is kind of cool. But before we get into that, we just have to take a quick second to thank our founding partner of the show, which is FilterBuy. FilterBuy is an HVAC filter provider, and they can manufacture and ship over 600 different sizes or custom sizes if you need. And everything shows up directly to your door, so you never have to worry about changing them. And it's easy. I mean, I have it signed up. They show up every 3 months, so I can just swap them out whenever I need to.
And you save 5% when you subscribe. So it's a great incentive to just get on that enrollment.
That's right. And we want to encourage you guys to be a part of the show. Make sure you guys are following us on Instagram at howtohome_guide. And make sure you sign up for our email list so you never miss out any of the new content that we put out. We're putting stuff out all the time. So make sure you guys are sticking around and being involved. But Peter, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Why don't you tell us how you got into what it is that you do and your background as an artist?
Well, yes. I studied art. I went to art school and never had any inclination for woodwork or anything like that. I'm from New York City, so there was never like a garage or a backyard with my dad and power tools, nothing like that. I never had any notion of building anything. And I guess initially, my first woodworking was building stretchers for paintings. And then my art became a little more sculptural. So when I left art school, I wanted to kind of continue in that direction. So I started working in kind of the set shop world in New York, where I just learned that craft of, everything from building flats, stage flats, to some of the more sculptural stuff they do. And then I also kind of got a lot into just working for contractors, doing apartment renovations. So I learned kind of basic construction through that. And I did that kind of work for a pretty long time. And then about 14 years ago or so, my wife opened a children's clothing store. The minute she said that, I had like a vision in my head, like, oh, I know exactly what this is going to look like. I could just see it, like it was this kind of nature world, all wood walls, wood everything. And so it was like my first like real job for designing and building something, and I was my own client. So I built our store, which was in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Then from there on, people just kept seeing that store and asking me to build them stores, and I was very lucky in that they would come to me because they liked the look of that store. So I got to be very creative with it, and I always had this mission to have a sort of feeling of nature inside. And one of my trademarks, I always built like dioramas in stores with kind of like a little miniature natural history museum features in stores, and used a lot of real trees and stuff, and everything's kind of very like woodsy. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, we decided to move out here to Los Angeles, and we opened a store here, and I built that store out. And then behind that, there wasn't really room for an office for that store, but there was a space behind it. So back there, I built a little cabin for my wife to use as an office. And then it was like a similar thing that people, because it was a public space, people were seeing that. And I just kind of went from there. And I guess I'm about 5 or 6 cabins in now. And they keep getting a little bit bigger and more elaborate. And the last one I built, you could really live there.
That's so cool. So it's been like a long evolution to get you to this point right now.
Yes, but it really feels like this is the point. This is what I was supposed to be doing. Even in my like early art and painting stuff, I was always like drawing little cabins and landscapes and stuff, and it just feels so super right for me to be kind of get to go into like these pretty naturey areas and build these structures.
What do you think it is that sparked your love for nature and cabins and kind of the outdoors? Is it something in your childhood or?
Yes. As I said, I come from New York City, so it's super urban, but I spent a lot of my summers in the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York, which is
gorgeous.
Kind of like ground zero for the American cabin in a way. Yeah, there's a really long tradition of these kind of rustic camps and cabins of, from like early trappers. There's a real aesthetic that goes with those places. A lot of people have heard of like the Adirondack chair as a design feature, but there's a real style of cabin that's from there, and I always love that stuff. And so I never really felt like a city person. I always felt I was supposed to be more and I know LA is still a giant city, but coming from where I'm coming from, this is the countryside.
Oh yeah, it's a huge difference. Yeah, we both have made the move from.
Yeah, but I came from more like what he's talking about, the upstate New York. Well, not the Adirondacks. I'm from Western New York, so it's very flat comparatively. But I know exactly what you're talking about because I've spent quite a bit of time in the Adirondacks growing up as well. So, but yeah, you're more city style New York. You had that experience, and I never really had that. I didn't even make it to New York City until I was 18. It's the first time I was ever there. So it's all different. But yeah, coming to the West Coast is certainly a change. And so what drew you to come to LA in the first place from there?
Honestly, I've wanted to live here my whole life. I've always kind of had this voice in my head like, you should be in LA, you should be in LA. And I applied to come out here for art school, and I didn't get into. I was trying to go to Cal Arts. I didn't get in, and that was always my plan. Was I would just stay out here, and then my life just kept me in New York. And I think my whole family had what you might call a collective midlife crisis, where we're just like, really, is this going to be our whole life living in this city? And we had come out here, my wife and I came out here for a wedding, and we're just like, oh, we want to be here. And so we just did it. There's a huge exodus of people leaving New York right now.
It's so expensive, and it's so hard to get ahead out there. And even I don't know, I remember the day that I was like, I have to move. My husband and I need to move back. And I was getting off the subway, and I saw a mom carrying the stroller with the baby up the subway stairs and like struggling. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do that. Like it's crazy out there. Things are a bit easier out here in a lot of ways.
It's more spread out. I mean, it's huge. It's a huge city, but it's more spread out. It doesn't have the high-rise structures so much. Talk to me about your building process. So what inspires you to do kind of the cabin builds, or how do you kind of go about building it? And do you work like primarily by yourself, or do you have a team?
Well, usually just have one other person that works with me. Sometimes if we need like real plumbing and electric, we'll get a real plumber and a real electrician in. Some of the like smaller stuff I could do myself. And usually I've only ever done them with one other person. As far as what inspires them, it's not to like sound like hokey, but I kind of get visions.
It's not hokey. I think it's creative.
If you point to a spot and you say, I want a cabin there, and we're standing in the woods, like I'll just kind of like see it in my head, like, oh yeah, I could see exactly what. And it's not even just when I was doing retail stores, it was the same. If I stand in the store, I could just, if I'm physically in the space, I have a really good
You have
sense.
a visual mind.
I have a visual mind, and like I have this ability to kind of react to a space and know exactly, I could feel like how the energy would flow in there and what would make the space special. And I have the same experience, outside in nature areas. And so yeah, but it's never exact. I don't see it exact. It's almost like I could see a cabin through the fog, and I could kind of like make out like the shapes of it. And I then I do a lot of my thinking just with a number 2 pencil and paper, and just kind of just doodle and doodle and doodle. And I do try and like keep it open too. I don't ever know the exact outcome until it's completely finished. I try and like leave it open to make as many creative choices along the way and just respond to what's happening and seeing what's working. And
so in your sketch process, are you like figuring out, like looking at it from how it interacts with the trees or the landscape around it? And so you're completely tying everything in from a visual perspective and then figuring out the build afterwards? Because it's more of a design thing and then trying to figure out how you're going to execute it?
Yes. Well, obviously, any client is going to have like some needs. Like someone wants a sleeping loft or an outdoor shower, or this one has a bathroom, this one doesn't have a bathroom, and size. So I keep the logistics in my head, but I do... my design, aesthetics are very important to me.
We were talking before the show about you have just finished up a cabin, and it was like such a big part of your life and such an experience for you. Can you kind of talk about like, on an emotional level or, not even like a spiritual level, kind of like what is the process like for you from beginning to end? And then what does it feel like when the project's over?
Well, yeah, because I've been lucky to be able to design everything I do. I see it as, basically making artwork, and artwork for me is like a spiritual process. I am very, very involved in it. And when like this last cabin I did, it was my biggest one yet. I was really just, the whole time I never was unable, going to bed at night, I'm just figuring out like how like every like piece fits together. I never really stop thinking about it. So I get extremely kind of attached to it and involved in it. And I was telling you, when I finished this last one, there was a little like, I felt kind of empty inside, but now it's there and people are enjoying it.
Yeah, are people living in that most recent one? You said, how big is it? You said it's the largest one you've done.
200 square feet. It's got a sleeping loft, and it's got an indoor bathroom with an outdoor shower. That is being used as a guest house and kind of a music practice space, and I think a little yoga might happen in there.
Nice. So it's like kind of like a little tiny home or a guest home or something like that. And is that primarily what your clients are reaching out to you most for, is kind of that like guest home or shed type detached space?
Yeah, with kind of an extra space for a house, But most of them, a lot of them I've done have the ability to be kind of like someone can sleep in it. It could be like a writing cabin, a yoga studio. Yeah, extra.
A little retreat.
Yeah, a little retreat. And
do you see yourself evolving into, now that you've built that one as your biggest one, do you see yourself building bigger and bigger ones, or do you like that kind of more intimate environment?
I like the intimate environment. I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a little late to become an architect, I think.
I have the same thoughts, because I find the same thing. I'm very drawn to the process and the design, and I love the software programs and all that stuff, but I'm like... Do you love the software programs? I do. I talk about it in every episode.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking, it's maybe I should have become an architect, because I do like, my ideas get a little bigger and bigger. We'll see what comes along. I assume that if I do get bigger projects, I can partner with architects. It's fun making big stuff.
Have you ever done like a tree house or like a cool kids playhouse?
Yeah, I've done a couple. I have one in my backyard.
I'll collaborate with you on one. I want to build a cool tree house in my backyard. I haven't started it yet, obviously, because I got a billion other things going.
So the tree house is for my daughter, and I just built my son a half pipe in the backyard also for a skateboard. But it's in my style. It's all cedar, and it matches the tree house in the backyard.
Do your kids realize how cool you are yet?
So it's a really nice half pipe.
Coming?
Yeah, it's a pretty gourmet half pipe. And no, your kids never realize how.
No, they will eventually.
Yeah,
They
they'll be like,
will.
oh, my dad made something like that one time. You're like,
No, I tell you, my son, he appreciates the half pipe. He knows I was pretty big.
do you have favorite materials or anything that you like to work with, or typical types of favorite types of wood or anything that you like to use?
Yes, I do. I love cedar. Just I feel it's got some pretty magical qualities, and as far as something that you could use outdoors and not really have to worry about what's going to happen to it over time. I really like this Shoshugiban, the burnt Japanese wood. I've done a couple projects with that, and I find that really fun to work with, and I think the appearance of it is pretty amazing. It's an old, I don't know if this qualifies as ancient technique, but pretty old, at least a couple hundred years old, technique of that the Japanese used, where they burn the wood as kind of a sealer. So it's this kind of scorched looking wood, but it makes it fire proof or somewhat fireproof, and helps it with like being bug proof, and it's
rot resistant.
And it looks amazing.
It kind of looks like almost like an alligator skin kind of finish when you're done with it. It's like a charred black skin, but it like burns out kind of the sap woods. It's very cool aesthetic.
It's like a pre-burnt down house.
Pretty much, yeah. It looks better than it sounds. But it's really interesting technique. Yeah, so I haven't actually done any of that stuff myself, but I've seen a lot of people. It's definitely become a lot more popular of late.
For somebody that would like to build something and start with a shed or start with a tiny house or something for their kids, but they don't really have the confidence, kind of like what would you encourage people to do in terms of like where to start with kind of honing these skills?
That's a good question. I don't know, a YouTube tutorial maybe, or
I know a great channel.
I guess just you would have to just get some tools and start playing around. Make a box or something. I really believe it's all doable. Yeah, one problem is having space to cut wood without making a mess, and you got to have the tools. But maybe you could volunteer your time to help me out.
Yeah,
There you
exactly.
go. Apprentice.
Yeah.
So you're obviously very multi-passionate as an artist. Although you say this is like where you feel like you belong, is this the medium you feel most comfortable in, like most confident in? Or
it's definitely the medium that connects with people the most. Some of my personal painting art can seem a little crazy and dark, and I understand why not everybody is necessarily gravitating towards it, but for some reason, whenever I build something out of wood, when people are in the space or around the space, they're always like, oh, wow, I love this. So, I feel like I have a way with wood that is can really connect to people. So I do think that gives me confidence with it.
a little more universal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't seen Peter's art, it's really amazing. I love the bodies that have kind of like the maps. Is it like, what are those inspired by? Are those maps all over them?
I guess they're kind of like a nature in a person, I guess maybe one way to
I
describe
want
it.
one of those for my house. Those are incredible. But the art is really great. And where is that all posted? Where can people check out
I
your
have
art?
that's at P_Staley, which is STALEY, at P_STALEY.
Okay, yeah, definitely check out his art as well.
The cabin building thing, has that transitioned into becoming kind of your your business, your full-time business?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you've done, you said 5 or 6 at this point. What do you have coming up down the pipeline? Do you have any cool projects lined up or anything that you can talk about?
No.
No?
I do have some kind of things that are in early conversation, but I wish I knew exactly what I was doing next.
That is my least favorite question in life. Like whenever I would come home from New York or whatever, people would be like, "So, what are you working on?" I'd be like,
Yeah, what's happening next?
I just wrapped this last one, and I'm working on putting together some stuff for the next one, but nothing I can really say yet.
Spell out. Yeah.
Right. And then you are also still working on your art
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Do you do that at home or do you have a studio?
I have a studio in downtown LA, which is also used as a wood shop as well.
Oh, cool.
Where do you source all of your, materials for everything that you...
Since I moved to LA, I get as much as I can from Angel City Lumber, which is this, I know you're aware of it, is a lumber yard where they find trees in LA that would either have been, that fall naturally or people are having removed that would usually just go into a wood chipper, but they kind of harvest them and turn them into lumber. So it's a completely, or almost completely green process. Just, I don't know if we call that recycling, upcycling, or
Yeah, I think it's just
some
like
sort of
it's like urban lumber. It's almost like an urban lumber rescue in a way. It's like
But-
this wood would have just been destined for a landfill or mulch or whatever, and they take these old trees and
they
slab them
provide
up
an
and-
amazing service, and they have just an unbelievable inventory. Anybody that's into wood, just to go check that place out. It's
Yeah, and they're
amazing.
only a couple years old as well. I mean, they've only been around for a few years. But all the guys there are great. I mean, we use them a lot for SoCal Wood Shop, and I go down there a lot for some of the stuff that I do. So, yeah, they're great guys. I definitely suggest people, if you're in the LA area, go check that out. But it's cool that you can then take, basically local natural materials that were here that have been kind of salvaged and then reuse them in the same environment and repackage them into a new cool cabin or art piece or something.
Yeah, I mean, it feels good morally, and clients love it, and it feels right. I mean, I don't like killing trees.
No.
I mean, obviously, as a carpenter, some trees are going to die, but
Yeah.
I'd rather avoid it where we can. When in New York, I was did a lot of I was a bit of a scavenger, and I would just kind of find a lot of my materials. I did a lot with just collecting like old wooden pallets and converting them into just usable wood.
What about when you went to art school? Like, what path did you see yourself on? Did you want to be like a painter, or did you have like a focus that you were?
Yeah, I was on the Picasso track.
Oh, okay. Like abstract art.
Not necessarily abstract, but yes, I was just always wanted to be like a fine art painter, which I still am, but I do a lot of sculpture, and there's everything in between, like building a cabin and making an abstract painting. I do everything in between. So there's sort of a direct through line all the way, because some of my sculptural stuff gets kind of to the border of design, and then I have some design stuff that gets to the border of art, and so I do a lot of different things. It's a little all over the place.
Does the art vision and the structural needs, do they ever not like match up when you're designing?
Yeah, there's obviously things I'd like to do. Then when it comes time to do it, it's not realistic. But I think because I'm so aware of how stuff is actually put together, it's like embedded in there in my creative process. So when I'm seeing something like a vision of what I'd like to do, I'm also kind of seeing like the little matrix behind it of how it has to happen.
So as somebody who kind of evolved into the building space, are you trying to figure out kind of where your contractor hat in terms of like, you got to figure out the material cost and all that, how much one of these things is actually going to cost? So you wear all those kind of hats.
Yes, definitely. And maybe not the most fun hat to wear. I have recently been working a lot with an interior designer who handles a little bit more of like the business side of it. So whenever you don't have to talk about money with the client, I find to be a real luxury because I'm not the best business person.
Well, they're
I
different,
don't think most
different types of
creatives
brains.
are.
Yeah, different types of brains. There's a creative brain,
So,
and then there's like the
I always think it's great to be able to deal with the client without having the money conversation with them. But yeah, I do. There's a lot of logistics, and a lot of these things I build, they're not so close to where the road ends. So just
getting materials in there.
Yeah, so like if picture like a lot of these cabins are on hillsides or up a mountain, and a lot of them, basically the whole thing has been carried up there by hand, and just you have to figure like how much hours it's going to be of just carrying, into a cost. And
how long did the last one, the 200 square foot one, or I think you
that
said
was
it was
3 months.
3 months. Okay. So I mean, it's a substantial investment of time to get one of these things built.
And that's 2 people working a little bit more than full time.
A lot of man hours involved
Yes.
in building something like that.
But it felt pretty quick. I mean, for how substantial it is, and just 2 people doing it, it didn't take too long.
Once you have kind of a sketch idea on paper in mind, do you then go back and actually kind of mock it up in a more formal, plan, or do you just kind of wing it?
More so, yes. This last one, I had to, because of it was a little bit more substantial. I had to do that, and that's fun. Those programs are pretty fun. Yeah. I forgot the name of the one because I have an iPad Pro, and I was a little frustrated because you can't really use SketchUp on that. So I had to find a new program, Shaper, I think it's called.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Because as I was saying before, I work best with pencil and paper. So using those programs on a traditional laptop or computer, I have a hard time with. But with the larger iPads, when you have the pencil, that's much easier for me. So I had been using SketchUp, but you can't use it on there. So I found one that seems to be working.
Like the stylus type planning.
Yeah.
I'm more the mouse and that kind of guy because I'm not a great artist.
We asked for show suggestions last week, and actually a couple of people wrote in wanting to talk about small, tiny living and just creating a functional space in a small area, which just living in New York, I think we all have a little bit of experience with that. But are there any systems that you like to incorporate in your design to make smaller spaces more functional?
I think it's really just going into a space and kind of laying stuff out with blue tape, measuring out and just kind of getting the shapes in a space and trying to feel what it actually would be like to move around in that space.
That's similar to what Kat from Neat Method had recommended, just basically laying out everything you have and then kind of like figuring out a home for it. What is your own home like? Like, how would you describe your own home?
A lot of wood.
Uh-huh.
I live in a kind of California post and beam modern house built in, I think, 1959. And I did do a lot of work to it when we moved in. It was all covered with white carpet. So it's a lot of Baltic birch. I did the floors in Baltic birch. I did a bunch of the walls in Baltic birch. And I find that when floors and walls are wood, you just get such like a warm, comfortable feeling.
Does your wife, do your styles align?
Oh yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
So she must be in heaven.
She likes, well, Yes and no.
You're like, define heaven.
No, well, she's from Ireland.
Okay.
So she is not so comfortable with the kind of this open spaces of like kind of this California modernism style. Like I think she'd rather be in a little cottage where it's raining outside.
Okay.
She's not as comfortable in the kind of I love her house, and I think she appreciates the style and likes it as well, but I think she wishes there was more rooms.
Do you find yourself drawn to like a particular style of architecture, or like is there somebody out there, I don't know, Frank Lloyd Wright as an example, like is there somebody that your work is based off of or that you're inspired by?
I hate the favorite question. Like my daughter's always asking me, what's your favorite this, what's your favorite? And I like everything. I like it all so much. Like I love Frank Lloyd Wright, obviously. But I would say maybe the Adirondack style is like my touchstone of, spent time in these camps in the Adirondacks when I was younger. And it just, that's kind of my like ideal.
Do you ever go back there? Like to get new inspiration?
Yeah, it's been maybe almost 10 years since the last time I was back there. But I also love modern stuff and futuristic stuff. And I'm not trying to create what I make doesn't necessarily look like Adirondack style. Ideally, what comes out is kind of its own style and doesn't look like
anything else out there, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously that's not going to happen. A million people have built every shape of cabin ever, but I try to have something that's, unique to me, and because a lot of my lines and stuff are on the kind of modern side.
Speaking on unique, I know you don't like the favorite question, but is there one of your cabins that stands out as like kind of one of the more unique builds that you've done?
This last one, I think, really is. Each one I've done, I've been like, oh, this is my best one yet. I feel like I'm getting much better at it. So the last one I've made is always kind of my favorite, and I feel most successful.
What's kind of your philosophy or the energy behind your work?
And this is another kind of lofty idea, but just transcendence. Like I would like someone to enter like a space I made and have like an almost spiritual experience, being like, there's something more to life. Or, and I feel like it can be achieved through these wooden structures that, when you make something in kind of reverence to nature, you can make these spaces that, have like a spiritual air about them, that when you enter them, it's, there is like this kind of feeling of tranquility and peacefulness and hopefully some sort of transcendence.
You're creating kind of like an escape, right? It's that like, I don't know, that escape from the daily life or the stress or whatever. And if you have the space for that kind of tranquil environment, like I would love to have something like that as kind of an office, a creative space. Or I can imagine, as a studio, as an artist or something like that. That's the type of environment you want, like, because that's what's going to kind of free your mind to do your best work, I think. And so when I saw your stuff, I was like, oh man, that's so in line with kind of what I would like to create, something like that. And that's why, I was so attracted to having you on the show. So
let's make something together.
I'm all about it. I got some space. I got to figure it out.
Where would you like to see the future of architecture and design go? Like, where would you, like, what kind of shifts would you like people to make when they're...
Well, I think the obvious question that is just everything just has to go like as green as possible. But I feel like that's pretty out there. That's, since everything I make kind of has this handmade aesthetic, I don't mind kind of a return to that. I feel a lot of design people are trying to make what they think the future is going to look like, and stuff can be a little pseudo-science fiction looking in the kind of design world. But I like things to feel kind of natural and comfortable, and I'd like people to get like kind of warmth and emotion from furniture and structures I build.
Do you feel like you have a signature style? Meaning, is there almost like a stamp that you implement on all of your projects?
I do feel that everything I make comes out looking like I made it, but I don't think that's so intentional. It's just that's how it comes out. It just comes out me.
An extension of you.
Yeah.
Do you mean like in terms of like natural lines and stuff like that? Or do you mean just like everything that you make feels handmade? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I just feel like I feel like I do have a style, but I don't think I am so conscious of like trying to make things that style. I just think it's just like kind of my natural expression.
How long is the planning process before you start your build?
Not too extensive, a couple weeks maybe.
I actually want to know kind of what inspires your art. Do you just wake up and like...
Yeah, it's kind of just like in there, like I got to get it out. It's
Yeah.
just stuff just comes to me, and if I don't like create it, I go crazy. I just have this kind of like creative like fire hose that I need to like point somewhere. Some stuff, the process is pretty loose and I can make something in an instant, but some stuff are very material heavy, so I might have an idea and like, oh, now I got to do that. Like that's going to be a pain to do all that.
That's so interesting to me because I think most people's perception of an artist is someone just like standing back and doing, you know what I mean? And like a whole process that's very like zen, and it's not always like that, is it?
Yeah, but I feel like when I made the decision to have a family, that ship sailed.
Yeah.
I
got this many hours in the day.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to make money at the same time, so it's just got to get it done.
Would it be weird for you to design a structure and come in and see it decorated in a way that doesn't fit your aesthetic or your intention for the space?
At first, you're just like, ooh, no, that's not what I saw in there. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of get used to it and realize it's fine. I mentioned earlier, I've been working with this interior designer here, and she's really great at what she does. So, but sometimes when I first see something walking the door, I'm like, no, I didn't think that, but she's always right.
It's a good collaboration.
Yeah, she's always right.
For people who want to, either get in contact with you or find more of your art and stuff, where do people go to see these cabins?
Well, I have an Instagram, which is at mindtreearts. I have a website, mindtreearts.com, which I think there's a link to get in touch with me. That's how I heard from you guys. And then I have, for my artwork, you could see that at P_STALEY on Instagram.
You have the most amazing art too.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff on both accounts, on both profiles. Really cool. We just want to say thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed it, and I think our audience will definitely get some inspiration from checking out some of the artwork and some of the cool meld of art and design and build all kind of coming together. It's really cool.
Great. Well, this was an honor for me. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
And we want to thank our founding sponsor of the show, which is FilterBuy, for making this series and this episode possible. So make sure you guys visit filterbuy.com and sign up for the service. And be sure to follow us on Instagram as well, at howtohome_guide. And don't forget to rate us on your favorite podcast app choice. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching. Thank you, Peter, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you guys next time.